Hello, this is George Sandman. I'm the founder and CEO of Growth Drive. And Growth Drive is a system used by business advisors to drive client profits, growth, and value. Now, we're also a community. Every week we get together to talk about all things business advisor, everything clients, cases, things we're seeing out in the world. Now, tune in here to this podcast, and you can join the conversation by scanning this QR code, passcode 867-5309. Jump into the conversation. Everyone's welcome. We're looking forward to having you. So here we go. On with the show.
Oh, yeah. There he is. The Northeast represented, Mr. Frasco.
Good morning, gentlemen.
In the loosest definition possible, I hope.
I guess it's Northeast, yes.
Yeah, man. So how are you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm on top of the world, quite frankly. Everything's good, and I have no complaints.
Yes.
That's awesome.
That is great. That is awesome. What's new? Any new business? Any new clients? Any new exciting stuff?
Well, I think my business model is very different than I think most of yours. I'm primarily an acquisition entrepreneur, so my leverage, quite frankly, is acquiring the companies that ultimately the goal is to acquire the companies that I work with. So really, the loose term is consulting for equity. But the idea is to embed myself in the companies that I'd like to work with and then ultimately acquire them. So it's a little different than the traditional advisory role that most of you are actually focused
Now,
on.
do they know you're there? Or are you like gorilla under the wire?
No, they know I'm there, but usually what happens is I'm assembling teams of skilled executives around the job that needs to be done, and my focus is very similar to what you do, which is really the diagnostics of what really needs to be done in the company, and manage them and have them track success based on the growth in the valuation or bridging the valuation gap. But that's a couple hours a month, maybe at most, on a quarter to quarter basis, is really the focus. And then just making sure that I manage the teams that are actually doing the execution.
I guess what I was asking, Joseph, is like, do they know that you might acquire the company?
Oh, no, absolutely.
Okay.
That's the engagement is based on equity participation on the upside.
Got you.
So I don't take retainer fees, if that's, let's put it that way. I don't take
you an earn in.
Correct.
I like it. That's cool, man. I like everything about that.
Well, it certainly changes the nature of the conversation, right? I mean, it deals with let's call it the general aversion that people have with consultants and advisors and whatever. And the basic premise is that you don't have any skin in the game. So, the last thing you want is to have a relationship with an owner where you give them advice and they take your project plan and throw it on top of the filing cabinet and says, yeah, this sounds nice, and moves on. But if you really want them to have sincere thinking about what you're presenting, then there's no better way, in my opinion, to do that than letting them know that you're willing to share in the pain as well as the upside.
You're the second person I run into that does that. One of my really good friends named TM, he's from Charlottesville. He's an outsourced sales consultant, and he does a lot of stuff like that as well. He doesn't acquire the company but he takes an equity position in almost every deal. He's like, hey, look, I can charge you X amount, or we can work on equity that I earn.
Right. So in many ways, what I'm not going to say I'm the quarterback, because it's I think not an appropriate term, but I manage the deal team. So as the company evolves and needs different people, I pull in from my network to address different things. So initially, like for example, most of the companies that we all come across, financial work needs to be done. There might be operational, and let's call it SOPs and things of the automation, that kind of work. So you pull in the people that really are needed to manage the transition process. But what it does is it relieves the cash flow drag that's typically associated with, with growth. So it accelerates the process.
Cool.
Joseph, how do you monetize if you're only on an equity side? Do you wait till a transaction to monetize?
No, we are participating in the profits and the growth and
Oh,
profits
okay.
and
So
revenue of the
you're
company.
taking a cut of the profits. Okay.
Correct. But the baseline is set from where they are right now. So we basically tell them, look, whatever you've built yourself, that's yours. We're not touching any of that. We're working
Yep.
with you on the upside. Our investment is our time in lieu of comp. And for that purpose, we're taking a piece of the equity on the upside.
I get it. So they grow by 10%. You now own not 10%.
A percentage of that 10%.
We know that 7% or whatever. You now own 7% because of the growth of 10%. And you take the profit off of that 7%.
Correct.
Got it.
Or anything incremental above where their baseline is right now. So if their EBITDA is, for argument's sake, $1 million, $1 million, and now their EBITDA is going to grow to 2 or 3 or 4 million, we're taking a percentage of all that upside. And it depends on the company. In some cases, depending on the industry and the business, sometimes it's based off of the EBITDA, sometimes based off the revenue. It depends how much control and involvement we have in the company. Obviously, the more control and involvement we have, the more we can base it off of EBITDA. The less control and involvement you have with the company, then typically it's more going to be focused on top line revenue growth.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, because I think the trickiest part of these kinds of relationships is that EBITDA is a very manipulative, a number that's easy to manipulate, right? And so you can manipulate it simply with bonuses or that sort of thing, but you can manipulate it also just by making business decisions. Hey, we're going to do X instead of Y, and that costs more money, right? Or less money or whatever, right?
Right. But look, the involvement is in such a way that it's rare for us to have less than 2, maybe 3 people involved in a company at any given time. So it's not like we're on the outside. There are people that are operationally involved in the company, so they have good sense in terms of what's going on. And honestly, if it reaches a point where there's funny business or games or whatever being done to be able to avoid any of the comp, we just say thank you very much, good luck to you, and we step out, and that leaves a huge hole in the company. It's very difficult for them to replace it. So, but it can happen.
Yeah,
it can happen. But
yeah, it's a really, I agree with Mike. It's a really interesting way to look at things. It's payment on increase in EBITDA with stock appreciation rights interest, right? If you will, it's the combination of those two, and I like it. That's why I was trying to understand. I was trying to understand the monetization part.
Right. So again, I don't know if you heard in the beginning, but the goal for us is the acquisition. That's our goal. Our goal is to acquire the company.
Ultimately, acquire it completely.
Correct. And the way we do it is we're essentially taking phantom equity up front in order to establish the relationship so that, it does a whole bunch of things. We can get into it a separate thing. But the idea really is due diligence is expensive, chemistry, finding out if there's chemistry, what are going to be let's call it post-acquisition issues that are going to be addressed. It's very difficult to do that without spending a ton of money up front. So this kind of gives us the ability to bridge that process at the same time, helping someone achieve their goals and establish the relationship, see if we're the right partners for each other, quite frankly. And at the same time, for the work that we do, get paid a premium because we financially, it's very, very lucrative for us in that process. And once, that's established, usually 12 to 18 months, there's a very clear path for both the owner to go from owner operator to owner investor if he wants to stay in that format, or to exit completely with a partner that he feels comfortable addressing the issues that are typically non-cash, legacy issues and employees and What's going to be the reputation, what's going to happen to the company afterwards, and his reputation in the community and so on.
You're right, Joseph. The typical third party purchase kind of transaction looks like speed dating to marriage. It does,
Right.
because you barely get any time to get to know anybody. 9 months isn't a long time, right? In total transaction time. I totally get it. I love the idea that you're extending that time in a constructive way, and you're building the relationship, and you're both figuring out whether this is a good fit. And at the same time, like you said, Joseph, you're not leaving money on the table. You're actually making money at that time. So if it doesn't work out, fine for both of us, right?
Correct. And I think even one more element is that, as the company, I mean, depends where you guys work with the companies, but typically the ones I'm working with are between, let's say, somewhere around between 5 and 25, maybe even up to 50 million in revenue. There's an evolution process that occurs as the company is growing, right? It might only have maybe one or two people initially in the, let's call it in the management or executive pool.
Senior
But
leadership
as
team.
it grows, divisions will become more formal. They might have, executives, and then they'll have, VPs. They might have some managers, and the needs will switch, will change over time. I have the ability to swap out the people that are involved in the deal team, so to speak, as that evolution occurs, and still keep control. Everyone will keep, let's call it, their long-term investment in the company, but that might be divided by more people as it goes on. But it doesn't change from the perspective of the owner. He knows what he's giving up in terms of getting the job done, and then he feels comfortable that there's a capable team that is going to take over in the transition process.
Interesting. Yeah, really interesting.
I mean, look, it comes from the experience all of you guys have had with companies that that do an exit. When it fails, it's not so. We find that the failure isn't because of the price. It's usually because of last minute issues. When you think you've done all the due diligence and everything is wonderful, the price is agreed to, the contracts are all okay. And the owner just looks and says, I can't do this.
Yeah. It's
I
wedding
can't do it.
genders.
Right.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
hopefully, circumvents most of those issues, I should say. And the
Nice.
other thing is also, I would say that the structure allows us actually, without getting too much detail, we can actually pay crap load more for the company than any financial buyer. And that's because the nature of the relationship, it can be structured now for longer term payments.
Yeah.
As opposed to, a single payment, which usually gets discounted for a financial buyer to take out or to, compensate for zero risk.
Yeah, right. Very interesting.
Cool. That was a great way to get started. Thank you. Now I understand Joseph, sort of. Mr. Rode,
Yes.
I'm calling you by the name Siri has given you.
Yeah. Well, you need to train her. You need to start publishing that in all your blogs and videos.
No, I like it when it mispronounces. Tim Rode. So what's new?
Actually, I've got a question for the group. So I'm coming up on probably 3 opportunities following the growth drive process to convert Clarity 2 or other previous work, strategic planning work, into a strategic growth plan. And I'm curious if anybody's used Claire or any of those features that George keeps talking about to actually get that done. Anybody a bunch of information and said, give me a strategic growth plan, or is there a template hiding or stored in the community somewhere?
I personally haven't done that.
I have not either. All mine are written, Tim, custom, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the data that's coming out. I'm looking at what they need to do. And then we're designing them a plan based on what their particular situation is and the results of level 1, level 2, SLT alignment, whatever we've done at that point, right?
I will tell you that Claire has been incredibly responsive to even esoteric requests that I giver about generating reports and stuff like that. So I'd be pretty confident it would punch out something.
Yeah, I've done the same thing, Eric, where I mean I've been creating plans like this for years, but not a strategic growth plan per whatever the growth drive wizards have had in mind. And so I just was wondering if there was some particular template or progression or train of thought that should be touched on or addressed. So I will find what I can and I'll report back to the group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim, it's Larry. In transition right now, traveling. So I don't have my camera on, but are you looking for a thorough strategic plan, 3 years mapping out vision, mission versus where they are currently and strategic themes, goals, or are you using the terms in the sense of a 1-year business plan, 2-year business plan? Because in Circle, there are templates that have been populated by some of our peers in terms of the types of plans they've used.
So the answer is it depends. I don't have a specific outcome in mind. I've got 2 companies that are coming out of Clarity 2 in the next 2 weeks. And, the way we talk about it in C3D and whatever is that the next step is to take that information and draft a strategic growth plan. And I suspected that would be at least 24 months, perhaps opening with some preamble about their long-term goals or strategic intent. I've got another one that's just free range. It's a company that's got a subline of activity. It's one of their verticals that I was working on with them yesterday, and we just whiteboarded their priorities for the upcoming year. And I thought, what a great opportunity to put that into a strategic growth plan as well. Can we grow that line of business for them? So I just thought I'd see if anybody could point at it and say, yeah, go here in Circle or, search for this. And
Tim, I think Larry makes a great point. First of all, if they don't have a strategy, true vision, mission, values, if they don't have that, then we would take them through a strategic planning process to actually lay out what's, how's that going to look and what what gets them to their long-term thing. And then we would go to me, those are 2 different things. One is a strategic plan. One is just a growth plan. I know you're using the word strategic, and I get it, but we would call the second a growth plan. This is what we're going to do between here and there to get you where you want to go, not the strategy, which includes the vision and mission, not that part, right?
Yeah, Eric, that's a good distinction. Exactly. Yeah, I do strategic planning for organizations and companies that are real classic strategic planning, where we begin with where do you want to go, the vision, mission, the aspirations, the why behind that. And then question 2, where are we at now? Thorough review of all aspects of the business. That's where our tools could really help. And I use them with a strategic targeted SWOT analysis, market trends. And then we look at the gap and so on from there versus a growth plan, which doesn't do all those things.
Right. So I guess the point that Larry was making, Tim, and that I'm trying to make is you got to decide which path you're on. If you're on the strategic plan path, then you need to go through that whole exercise of doing a full strategic plan. If you're on the growth plan path, which is, a lot of the time where we are, or maybe their strategy needs to be tweaked a little bit because they really haven't fleshed it out, and we're helping them do that, but we're really focused on the growth plan. Then we're taking the outcomes and we're lining that up into what would be a growth. Again, I like the fact that it's strategic, the word you're using is strategic, but it's really a growth plan, right?
Well,
Yeah.
George.
hi guys. Sorry I'm late. Chief bottle washer. I was dealing with a helping one of our customers out. So
you're coming in the middle of a question. You're just coming in the middle of a question. What I just posed a question to the group was whether anybody's had experience taking the output from Clarity 2 which I've got 2 of those coming up in the next couple weeks, and using Claire to create the strategic growth plan, which is not my term. That's the term of
Yep.
of whatever we call it in Growth Drive for what's unique about the strategic plan. And to Eric and Larry, to your question, to the two of the 3 scenarios I've got have the vision, the mission, the values.
Yeah.
That those are all pretty deeply entrenched.
Yep.
It's taking now we showed up with this Clarity 1, Clarity 2, alignment exercise, et cetera, deep dive, and now creating a strategic growth plan for them for the next 12 to 24 months. And so my question was, where does that exist somewhere? Is that a thing that I can go use, a template, a question I can ask Claire?
100%. So if I can parachute in, not having heard the context and the other answers, so I'll just give an unvarnished purist's view. We call goals intent, right? I mean, a more powerful word. We're borrowing from the Marine Corps. Intent. The steps we need to take, and as Larry and I talk about in the C3D, the steps we take to reach that intent is our strategy, right? Or the actions we take is strategy. That strategy is comprised of things. I'm just going to use the word things. So a strategic growth plan is absolutely, from a purist's perspective, absolutely an appropriate term. And yes, I'll make sure you have, Tim, it's in the C3D book, and it is in the community, and I'll track it down, but use the search bar. Don't drive yourself crazy. If you have trouble, let me know. So the question then becomes, what are we growing? And are we growing revenue? Are we growing value? Are we growing something else? Right? Because grow is kind of a nebulous term. Now, all of us on this call want to grow. We know that ultimately we want to grow the value of the business. That often includes both growing revenue and growing or increasing strategic capacity, right? So from a purist's perspective, and getting back to Larry, what Larry just shared, good morning, Larry, establishing intent, determining current strategic capacity in line with that intent, and then creating a plan that is going to increase strategic capacity in select areas. And that's the power of the 3 dimensions of growth, right? We were able to say, okay, you want to grow revenue? Cool. We're going to start with dimension 1. We're going to make sure we don't burn through your cash. And we're going to move into dimension 2 and put the habits, the processes, the accountabilities in place that are going to grow profits, right? Margin, and revenue. And
that's really what I was looking for, is whether it's been implied a couple of times that Claire either can or will soon be able to convert that input into the plan with sprints, or at least a framework or suggestions for sprints and things. And I just didn't want to build that from scratch, carving it out of a tree, when if the template was already there, or something that I could use.
So you're referring to a template prompt?
I don't know if it's a prompt, if it's a thing, if it's an article. I'm not sure what it is. I heard about it in C3D, and we've talked about it, and I just wanted to see if there was a go here.
Well, and I think, Tim, that's a great question. And if I stop being a purist for a second, and there are a lot of prompts in the community as well, and we've tried to get them all into the AI prompts for advisors, but they end up getting posted willy-nilly sometimes, which is not a problem. Just search in the upper right corner. Those prompts exist. Now, the question then becomes, and I'd love to turn this back to the room, there are a few approaches, right? What might we do? We might print out the strategic capacity report, that yellow tab, and put put cover materials on it. We could do the level 2 report and put cover materials on it. We can not give that report at all and just create whether it's 2 pages or 50 pages, So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what can clients digest, and then how do we what can clients digest, and then how do we best deliver that to them? I don't know if that's in the right order, but I'd
Yeah.
love to hear your thoughts.
I'll just jump in to add some thoughts. Thanks for setting that up, George. What clients could digest? I would first go through the process and then determine, knowing your client, what can they really digest? What can they really have the capacity to execute on? We have strategic capacity, there's execution capacity, which is kind of separate, but related. But I think if we take the results from Clarity 1, Clarity 2, drop that into Claire with a prompt that's saying that I would like it in this flow or format using strategic intent language, capacity language, and put this in a logical flow or roadmap. I'd probably begin with an overview, roadmap of it before I get a detailed plan. And then I would see what comes out of that. But I would definitely use Claire. I haven't done it specifically for this yet, but I would. But I would enter in enough information for Claire to see it with the prompt of how kind of the flow you're thinking your growth plan will end up with.
Yes. And Tim, I'll be very happy. In fact, it would be fun. So not just happy, but excited to collaborate with you on this, and we can do a share screen, because I'm pretty adept at doing this.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I more than
tongue in cheek there, George.
Yeah.
a little more context. So this is a pet project of mine, like strategic plan. Like I'm in the process of writing a 3-part series on breaking strategic planning into 3 components: strategic thinking, which should always precede strategic planning, and then strategic doing, thinking, planning, doing, right? Which really follows Growth Drive's process. It's one of the things that resonated with me when I looked at the system. So I've already written and published a strategic thinking piece. I'm working on strategic planning right now. And my position is that strategic planning, or many strategic plans, are flawed, is that they're a plan, but they're not an execution system.
Yes.
And again, this is really the essence of Growth Drive, in that if you got this plan, but if your people can't execute it, you've got shit, right? So to quote Mike. So the thing in my book is that the strategic plan should be extremely executable, and that's what I'm looking forward to coming out of, Claire, which, especially with the the annual priorities, the quarterly sprints, the highlighted goals per quarter, etc. So I want to create something here that is actually an executable plan.
Tim, I just comment too, the use the sports analogy, right? You go into a football game with a strategic plan. Hey, we're going to do this. I think the part, and I'm really curious to see how this plays out with Claire. I'd volunteer to join in that conversation with you and George, and add my 2 cents if it would be worth anything. But what we find is that the messiness of actual execution requires it requires a gentle hand. This is where AI can't do what we can do.
100%.
Understanding what the client is saying, reading the room a little bit, and understanding that the client says they want X, but they really want Y, and reading through that, and then getting that and having the execution happen in a sequence that not only is most logical, right? Boy, best thing we could do is just return the kick for a touchdown right away, and then we got 7 points on the board. That'd be great, but that's not how it's going to happen, right? And so I guess the figuring out how to prompt Claire to take into account some of the other aspects of it, and being able to manage it, and being able to break it down into small enough chunks to be agile enough that when things do change, that you can adjust and that you know how to do it. That's the part that typically we write those by hand and not with AI.
Well,
And
yeah.
I'm not saying it can't be written by AI. I just haven't thought about how to do that yet.
And there are three ways in which humans consume the written word, right? We have people who love long form, and doesn't matter. I was about to tell a war story. We have long form, people who love long form. We have people who love bullet points and people who love graphics. And I don't know about you, when I was a kid, I'd go through National Geographic and I'd look at the pictures and read the captions. And then I'd go back and, and kind of pull the articles apart. And that's that's how my brain works. I'm a high D, high I. We need to communicate with our clients in ways that we, if you understand how your client loves to consume or prefers to consume information, let's honor it. I also, if we think about, if you hearken back in C3D, also in the previous launch course, the growth drive methodology lays these out in an ideal order, right? We're going to deal with creating an effective senior leadership team, then we're going to push those disciplines down into the rest of the organization, and the problem is most companies don't have the ingredients to do that. So we need to have that intervening step. And Tim, this is important. And this is something that AI cannot do, is to say, okay, well, what are we capable of doing? And if we're not capable, if we don't have a scalable sales process, I love to pick on sales, right, Mike? If we don't have someone who can create a scalable sales process that will be effective, or is designed to be as effective as possible, then we need to not put that in sequence before we can bring the discipline in, the experience, someone to say, well, someone who can do it. So there's an intervening step, and there's a workshop that we actually, we give you guys the tools. They are definitely in premium resources, the tools to run a workshop on, what the hell can we do? Are we capable of doing, and what impact will it have on revenues and profits, right? Like with the drivers of value. So just a comment there. Eric, you make an excellent point. There are things that AI can't do. The other is not to overwhelm the client, right? So if they say, I want to grow, it's like, okay, well, let's focus on predictable profits and cash flow. We're going to grow this business. This part of the plan is your launch pad, whatever you want to call it, right? I think in our case, we call it Operation Launchpad. And that is in the playbook, the desk reference. So I know I'm throwing a lot of information out, but something that Larry just said, and Tim, I think belongs in and I would feed this to we will feed this to AI. It's what's the intent? Where are we today? And what's the logical, what is this business capable? And you can tell your client, ideally we do it in this order, but you don't have a VP of sales. And so we're going to, however you want to communicate it. Okay. We can do that in AI.
I'd also point out though, George and Tim, that I know you get this, Tim, just saying it out loud for all of us to think about. If I'm your general contractor and I'm building a building for you and I'm laying out the plan, I'm sure not going to show you the Gantt chart of every single detailed little step. The client won't understand that. So I think you got to take into consideration, what's the plan for? Are you talking about the plan for you as the project manager to manage the whole thing? That's a different plan in my book than the plan that the customer sees and what you're going to walk them through. That might be, here's the 10 steps to get you from here to here in big chunky steps that they understand. Hey, first we're going to work on sales. Next, we're going to work on operations. And it might have one or two bullets underneath it, but it might not be the 30-step plan to fix sales, right? Mm-hmm. So which plan are you trying to do and output?
I agree 100%. What, like an ideal solution for that could be multiple versions of the same plan, where there's a one-page summary and then one that's sort of a mid-level and one more And then as I've been thinking about this over the course of the last week or 10 days, I thought, I've made some I've made some documents and things in Google Docs that unpack, right? So you can close them up in Pageless View, or there may be other apps that do a better job of this, but you could have your one-page summary, and if you click on the little caret in front of it, it unpacks that priority. And then you could keep going more granular all the way down with, like, ultimately this plan in my mind needs to have the assigned accountability, what the KPIs are, the targets, the timeline, things like that. You don't want to drown somebody. Like, if you've ever seen a pack of prints to build a house, and I'm sure you have, you know,
I
it's
have.
but there's also summary pages up front. And so it could be different versions of the same document, or it could be something that would be, the really cool solution here would be something that collapses and expands as needed to see the pieces that you want or need, depending where your station is in the business, or who you're presenting it to.
Yeah.
Tim, do you ever record any of the conversations you have with your clients?
I do.
Might be helpful for you to take those conversations and run through a psychographic process and build a profile, so that when you turn around and create those reports, or let's call it a go forward activities, that they are prefaced and languaged in a form of communication that would be most receptive to them. That's one point. And I think the second point I have is, I personally, from my experience, I would caution. It's one thing to put, what the long-term goal is, I think, but especially in the initial stages of a relationship, that the best thing you can do is keep the milestone as tight and narrow as possible, and perhaps, do it for, what's the goal for the next quarter, and embed it with those things that will have the highest likelihood of execution and impact. And then once you've had the opportunity to develop the trust in the relationship through the fact that you've executed, then you can kind of lay out a longer term process. But I personally, in my experiences, whenever you lay out, as Eric pointed out, and Larry pointed out, when you put out something there that's very in depth, it makes you feel good because you're showing your level of expertise and your knowledge base. But for the client, they just look at that and they're like, oh,
Oftentimes they look at it. In my experience,
I'm overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed.
And they just say, I can't do it because it's too much, and then they walk away.
Joseph, I'm glad you brought that up. Yesterday, I met with a business owner, $18 million business. They fill syringes and tubes for beauty products, perfumes, and so on. He's stalled for 4 or 5 years now. And we got deep into conversation. I'll be meeting him in a couple of weeks to do maybe, Tim, what you're talking about. But I already know, since he has no management team, no matter what Claire or any template is going to spit out, it's for me, because he is not in a place, when I hear him, he's not in a place to receive all that information. I already told him, right? I said, right now, the end in mind for him is he wants a certain value for the company because he wants to be out in 3-4 years. And in that, I said, that's not going to happen because you have no management team. Why would anyone buy you if it's just you and your brother, and you and your brother are going to leave, and 80 employees are going to be inherited by another company? So I already started with the end in mind in terms of seeding where we're going to begin, regardless of where everything gets spitted out in the process with Claire, templates, our whole process that's beautiful and wonderful. I already know he is missing the management team, and everything falls on his shoulders and his brother's shoulders. We got to fix that. And he said, yes. So I'm going to then probably try to create something that gets that win, to Joseph's point, in a short period of time, that builds credibility and trust to allow then the bigger plan to then start feeding him the bigger plan. Otherwise, he'll never execute on anything.
You guys are giving great advice. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Larry. That's wise words.
I think that, Tim, when you heard from Eric this morning and then Larry, I think the one thing we all have learned over time, and that is synoptic information in the meeting is far more easily absorbed and received than volumes of information. And it's nice that our system can generate all those pages, and they may give you hands-on specific details, but synoptic and focused on the one main objective that the client tells you they really like to see happen first. You can talk 3, but focus on one. And I think it gets a lot faster receptiveness, and you can get an easier buy-in by all the parties that have to be involved to do it.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
And early wins.
Yeah, I agree big time, Ed. You know, in my experience, it's kind of like what Joseph said, you know, all these huge plans and all this kind of stuff is really cool. But it really is kind of about me whenever I share something that detailed. Thank you. I have an appointment Friday that I just changed. Thank you, Joseph. Appreciate it. But you know, the entire structure of the meeting. But like when you get down to it, like I think my thing to Tim is the big question is that client of yours that's finishing level 2, are they really ready to get to execution? And if they are, then you're in a good spot. What really sucks in my experience is when you come in and you recognize exactly what the real problem is because you're an expert and the client doesn't want to work on it. They want to work on all the trivial stuff around it. You know, that's not a strong point of mine. So that's my limit, non-bloviating stuff for you, Tim, is like, if they're ready for execution, then I think you've got some tremendous help.
Bye, Larry.
But sometimes, Tim, you have to use the little stuff that they want to get done. And I think this is maybe I misinterpreted, Joseph. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I heard from you, and I believe in, sometimes you got to earn the right to do the big stuff by doing some of the little stuff that they want done. And so sometimes you got to go just execute some stuff for them, fix a couple of things, and that opens the door for them to be willing to trust you to execute the big things. They're not just going to hand over their whole estate to you in one meeting and go, yeah, manage this whole thing, right?
Yeah, correct. That's what I was saying. In fact, the way it actually lays out for me is, you know, despite what, you know, what the report will show, usually the way I handle it is, you know, let's call it an alternating quarter, where one quarter in the value equation, let's call it, you know, one quarter I'm working on generating, you know, bottom line profit or increasing EBITDA, and the next quarter using the excess cash flow that's created to be able to develop some of the foundational issues. So there's this back and forth that's going on. The client always sees the natural progression without getting, let's say, caught up in just building a management team, which is going to be potentially a cash suck for his company, you know, for 2 or 3 or 4 quarters before he starts to see some type of you know, growth in the bottom line cash flow of the company. So it's going back and forth, but you have to gauge that from the client to see where he's coming from.
I also, just one last point, Tim, just riffing off the top of my head. If you make the really big plan and you say, here, client, here's the plan, here's what it's going to look like. And I think we all know that it's not going to happen exactly that way. It gets confusing to the client when they've seen the whole plan and now you're off the plan, right? This is every football game we've ever watched where, hey, we walked in, we thought we were going to do it this way, and oops, the defense picked up on that, and we're not playing that same thing, and we got to adjust. Why do they always come out at halftime and, you know, and if they're doing better, they look different than they did in the first half, right? And so by reviewing the plan at a high level, hey, we're going to work towards these, and here are the big chunky steps, but we're not showing you all the details because we're going to have to go, you know, we're going to have to weave our way through reality to get to these things. And we know that we've built enough buildings to know that sometimes when you get to this point, the electrician can't show up on the right day and you're going to sub in the plumber to do their job first, and then you're going to bring the electrician in. And they go, how come the electrician or the plumber's here, the electrician hasn't been here? You don't want that kind of reaction from it. So reviewing at too much detail, again, only causes problems. It doesn't create any benefit. But just, again, thoughts.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. And I can see your point, Eric. You know, guys, the one thing that this just cements in my mind, we have to have that preliminary conversation about, if you build a strategic plan that is based on what I would call a phase line, I believe Joseph called it a milestone, same word for a different, it is a measured point on a journey. We need to understand, if we have the discipline and we're talking to the right client, which means a qualified client, right? This is a part of the qualification that they're willing to get it to have this deeper conversation about where they're going. A consultant can come in and fix the sales process, right? That's a consultant. We're advisors. We are peers with the CEO, right? That's our role at the table. And if we take the time to establish that intent, it allows us at any point to what Eric just shared, chaos, right? The plan changes when the bullets start snapping. And we've all seen, who has not seen this? The client is here. Tomorrow they're here. I'm like,
yeah, all the time.
And if we've had the discipline to have the growth conversation and say, okay, man, let's go back to our guiding principle here. You need $20 million net of taxes and fees to hit your wealth and legacy goals. Has that changed? No. Okay. Now, because if that's changed, let's talk about it. It puts you in a very important, powerful, but important role. You're able to hold a mirror up to your client. So I know you know what? I'm not going to sandbag. We should do that. That is what a truly qualified long-term engagement client is willing to have the transfer. I wish Larry was still on, right? The transparency, the vulnerability, and we have created the trust. And I know that you're all very skilled at doing this. We have created the trust for them to share that with us. And we then are positioned to be the guide to help lead them there.
And first of all, I want to thank, this has all been really great advice. I appreciate all of it. To be clear, my goal is not to create the strategic growth plan as it's referred to in the growth drive process and walk in and drop the 30-page volume on the owner. Not at all. The first user of this plan is me. I want to see it. I want to see what it looks like. And if it doesn't exist, then I need to get busy carving out of my tree. I need to use my old approach or transform to a newer approach. So my initial question was just if this capability exists, if it's like level 2 or level 3 in the whole execution leadership system, then I wanted to find out where it was. And then to see it myself, do what you're talking about, Joseph. I love your idea about looking at the psychographics of the people I'm sharing it with, but look at myself and see if it's something that aligns with their capabilities, and then adjust and taper it, give them as much as they need to see for the quick start or year one or whatever it is they want to do. So it can be adjusted. So all very helpful. I think this is all really, really useful advice. My goal is to build the first 1 or 2 of these and see what capabilities are in there, how much of that can be automated, and how much I have to do as a craftsman, like a veteran journeyman in the business.
Well,
at least
Yep.
my comments, Tim, were not all directed just at you.
No,
I was
get it.
thinking broadly about how do you do this and have a conversation. I knew you would take what you needed out of it, Tim.
Yeah.
As Sir Tim and our resident award winner, I knew you'd figure it out.
Week,
but
man,
I
you're
just
going to
wanted-
hear about it.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that.
Tim, I just dropped a link in the chat for you that might help. You can go through this process in your own way for the first couple of times and capture it. And once you've done it, this is a platform that I've used before, that what it will do is actually take your thought process and convert it into a actual automated systematic process. So once you've captured a couple of times, then I guess you can replicate it. You don't necessarily, I mean, you can still use, whatever Claire for the process, but you might want to be able to manage it externally, because it'll actually take your thought process and not necessarily which I don't know if you have the ability to, or I mean, potentially, I guess you could upload it, as a markdown file, and then use it alongside Claire. But otherwise, you can.
That's cool. Yeah, that's very cool. Thank you
Yeah, I'll
very
check
much,
that out.
Joseph. Love that.
Can you see if it integrates with Claire? Because I see that it can integrate.
Yeah, give me time. That's a great question, Teresa. Give me time.
Sorry, George.
No, it's not a problem. We're we are developing APIs from the ground up. When we take Claire, and when you meet Claire too inside Clarity, she is designed from the ground up with APIs. So would this be a logical API? I'll certainly look at it.
Yeah, I don't know if it necessarily makes sense as an API. I mean, generally what we do is often, you go into a company and you have a conversation with someone who's in marketing, or someone's in sales, or in HR, or whatever, and it's in their head. They know what they do. They just have a very difficult time articulating what they do, so you can convert it into some systematic process. This will help them do that, because of what it'll do.
Very
It will
cool.
capture what they're doing on a regular basis, then actually go out of its way. It will actually create that process. Then you can fine tune it and manage it the way you want. But at least it jumps that step with having to have them. It's very difficult for someone to actually sit there and think. I mean, simple example is driving our car, right? When we first started, we were probably paying attention to 100,000 different things. Today, most of us, when we drive, we're not paying attention to anything about the driving. We're usually thinking about something completely different, or listening to music or whatever. It's the same thing. And then if I would have to come back to someone who's been driving for 30 years and say, okay, can you tell me how you drive your car? You would have a very difficult time articulating all the different things that go in, because you're not paying attention to it. So the same thing will be here. This one will just kind of capture what they do and convert it into a process. I'm saying, Tim, for you, if the idea is to create a strategic plan, I think you already know intuitively what you want to do and how you want to do it. So this might actually help you just put it on paper, so to speak, as a
I love
process.
that, Joseph.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you.
Very, very cool. That's a great analogy, by the way. I tried to explain to someone how to get somewhere here in town. Right? Charleston's not very big. It's not very complicated. It's grids. I couldn't think of the name of all the streets. I'm like, well, you go up like 2 blocks, I think, and then you take and I can get there without giving it a second thought. Anyway, very cool. Very cool. Great conversation, guys. Tim, I'm looking forward to the templates are out there. Let's get together.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Thank you all. I think it's an important step in our evolution, because we're, we want to create client wins, and we're going through a process that, I'm speaking for myself anyway, I'm increasingly delighted with and finding useful. Clarity 1, Clarity 2, and the Unity, and that comes out of that support. And now to take and turn that into an executable system, not just a plan on paper, but something that is a system for execution reliably, that we can expand and contract to everybody's feedback here. Absolutely 100%. You can speed it up, you can slow it down, you can pull parts out, you can delay, you can take one chunk of it, whatever. Something that's very, not sure what the right word is, you'd help me out, but just something that's very adaptable to the evolution of companies improving faster or slower. They lose key people, whatever a new offer comes in and they've got to prepare for sale in 3 months or 4 months. That's happening with one of my clients right now. So this elastic, what I would call strategic growth plan, would be like my ultimate goal coming out of this.
Can we zero in, Tim? Love that. Love that. Do you mind if I zero in on, so you have a client, they got an offer, they have 3 or 4 months to prepare.
Unsolicited, yeah. And these
unsolicited
guys
offer. So
right.
Can I ask some questions that might help educate people who are watching, the less? So who did to the extent you're able to share, who did the offer come from? The unsolicited offer?
Yeah, good question. So I don't have the full depth knowledge of this. Some of this I found out when I got back from my trip, but the company that is the client is a regional insurance broker that has a lot of high value clients that they deal with, are very successful in the area. They've gotten an approach from an private equity firm that is run by a guy who's got decades with the big insurance providers. They've created an AI powered process that they are looking for a company to acquire as a platform that they can use then for a roll up of other insurance firms.
Yeah.
So that
great.
they're pitching this guy because there's I think they both graduated from the same university, so they kind of know each other. So this guy got on, and he was planning on selling in 3 to 5 years anyway. He was like my ideal client. Like, no, you can't sell yet. You have to wait for me to do the whole thing so I can learn the process. But
so it was a private equity group, Tim. That's great. I wanted to.
It is a private equity. I don't know much about the private equity. I think there's a shell of the private equity. So this particular one is going to be focused on the insurance vertical, but I think the larger private equity firm has holdings in like 130 different companies.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of independent sponsors making offers, and that's a different animal. And we don't have to dig into that. We only have a few minutes left. That's very cool, Tim. What's their strategic capacity?
They're right now they scored at about a 69.
Okay.
And he's get like their first offer is a multiple beyond. I think it's a strategic buy, right? So
I was going to say he probably has strategic value. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
it does because it would be the platform company, and so he was on a plan to sell for much more than what he's looking at now. But the offer right now, with all the effort and the risk of the next 3 to 4 years, is looking pretty attractive, and the role that they're promising for him in the roll up process, like he would be the drum major for the parade, right? He would be the guy out there helping to find new firms, and so all that's pretty attractive to him.
There's
It's
a
a
great
win
saying.
time. Like it just went to a complete tailwind for him. So
That's awesome. A bird in hand makes it hard to blow your nose. And it's yeah, you're welcome. I like to corrupt these things.
use that.
No, I mean a bird in hand. That sounds like a super fun project for him. Okay, you're welcome, Therese. But a bird in hand, it's potentially strategic value. I love that they have. Is that a level 2 strategic capacity score?
No, they were about to go through level 2.
Okay, I'd be interested.
It's after the alignment exercise. So the whole leadership team, which is small, has been through the alignment exercise. That's a consensus.
How did that go?
It went really well. It went really well. It was, and I walked out of there, and the owners were thanking me for the clarity they got, and the senior leaders too. That I've had 2 experiences with the alignment exercise right now. They both have been stellar.
Awesome. Awesome. It'd be really interesting, and I would argue quite urgent to get that same group together and do level 2.
That's what's pending, and that's what I want to be able to leverage that into the strategic growth plan. One quick note I've been meaning to share with you since before the summit is that the other group that I took through clarity, the alignment exercise, was a bunch of subject matter experts that are now executive leaders in a $30 million tech company. And the debate I got around the questions and what the meaning really meant in Clarity 1 was like almost stalling. Like I was tap dancing my way all the way through that. So there's some questions I want to share with you there because there was a lot of debate about that. I know you haven't done yet with those questions what you did with the ones in Clarity 2. So I'll bring
we're not and we're not going to change level 1.
I wasn't asking you to change. I just want to let you know where the debate was.
I would love to hear that. 100% value it. Thank you. I thought you were questions about level 2. I'm like, it's pretty clear. Very cool.
I think when you find, Tim, that you take them through level 2, I wouldn't be surprised if that 69 rolls back a tad bit to more like 62 to 63.
Yeah.
Because I think the refinement of the questions helps everybody to get a better perspective of how real the company is operating and not how optimistically the company is operating.
I can do 10 pull-ups. Really? Show me. Yeah. Very cool, guys. What a great conversation. A roller. We have 2 minutes left. Anybody have anything they want to add? Key takeaways, things they want to share? Anything they need from me? How can I help?
I had a question. I was reflecting on the dimension 1, 2, and 3. Should we hold 2 and 3 like as a dessert and just say, you gotta focus on dimension 1 first? I think as I kind of caught myself promoting ultimately six prompts and 2 in each dimension, and I'm wondering, I think I overwhelmed and got the team off track. So just a reminder myself, and I don't know if anyone else experiences, but that dimension 1, hang on to that one because that's the one that's going to create the low hanging fruit, and then only when they show that they can demonstrate get through that they go to 2 and 3, which are much more I would say complex, perhaps.
Yeah. That's a great question, Joe. And I think you've just highlighted why we go through, we have the level 1 analysis so we can educate people that, this is a holistic way of looking at a business. We look at the whole business engine. And now let's focus on the fundamentals, having an effective senior leadership team, people who are productive and loyal, recurring revenues, the sales process, getting good numbers out of the system, strong SOPs, and high customer satisfaction, and margins. I forgot margins. And yeah, I think you're Joe. That kind of circles back to Tim's point. Let's not overwhelm them, and also a point that I think that many of us, Joseph, and made as well. Let's not overwhelm them. But yeah, Joseph. And they're dimensions, so you can pull. Let's take strategic planning, right? It's a dimension 2. It's in dimension 2 because if somebody says just make this easier to run, saying, right, let's get involved in a strategic planning process, it might, depends on the business owner, it might not be well received. But if they say I want to grow, we pull it out of dimension 2 and we're going to start the engagement with this complete analysis, identifying the goal, running the analysis, understanding capacity, et cetera. So that's a great point, Joe. And I just chewed up the clock to the bottom of the hour. So, guys, great conversation. Rick, great to see you, man. Thanks for being on the call. It did feel like you didn't have a chance to participate, but Jeff, same comment.
Hey, George,
Yes, sir.
could we set up a separate call? I'd love to get some more information.
Absolutely, Rick. I will email you. I assume I have your email address, and
I think you do somewhere. Yeah.
I'll email you after we hang up here.
Thank you.
Thanks so
All right,
much.
guys.
Great call.
Not a word. This was a great conversation. Thank you.
It was.
Thanks, Jeff.
I was late. Don't worry about it.
Gentlemen, have a great day. Anything I can do to help, let me know. Rick, I'll email you right now.
Thank you.
You guys. Bye.